Raman Kapoor, a ship's captain. 6 months ago, his job was routine. Move cargo, keep schedule, come home. In February, his tanker anchored in the Persian Gulf. It hasn't left since. He didn't make a political decision. He lived inside one. 2 tankers, 1 night. A national oil company's own ships, struck while crossing the world's most watched waterway. Here's what nobody explained correctly. This isn't about Iran or the US or a ceasefire that keeps almost happening. It's about a system that made ships like Kapoor's expendable, and once you see how it works, you can't unsee it. Most coverage of this crisis asks the wrong question. Will Iran close the strait? The real question is why. In 50 years of naval planning around this waterway, the answer has never included a seat for the people actually sailing through it. 21 miles wide at its narrowest, a fifth of the world's seaborne oil, and not once in 5 decades of crisis planning has that planning included the crews on the ships. It sounded like deterrence. For 50 years, Iran's ability to threaten the strait has worked as leverage precisely because closing it would hurt everyone else more than it hurts Tehran. That's not protection. That's a one-sided bet, and the crews on the water have always been the collateral in it. That leverage is also why the US Navy's 5th Fleet has been permanently based in Bahrain, a short sail from the strait. For decades, a standing military commitment to a waterway most of the world only thinks about when something goes wrong in it. Tankers were attacked in these waters in the late 2010s. A commercial vessel was briefly seized in 2023. Each time, a news cycle, a round of naval statements, then quiet. No lasting change to how crews are protected, because nothing forced one. Then, in February 2026, the standoff stopped fading. Building a real evacuation and relief system for merchant crews in a war zone would have cost money and diplomatic capital nobody wanted to spend before. So it didn't get built. And by August, that gap wasn't theoretical anymore. By June, Washington's top diplomat said publicly that Iran had mined what he called large segments of the strait. The US Navy has run a dedicated mine clearing mission there since April 13. Meaning that 7 months into this crisis, the world's most powerful navy still hasn't finished clearing a waterway it has full access to. Remember Kapoor from the opening? Here's what he actually said. We are collateral victims here in this war conflict zone. We are not trained for war or warlike situations. We just keep the world trade moving. And when he was asked what happens if this drags on for weeks, his answer was specific. To leave his post, another captain has to volunteer to sail into the same war zone and relieve him. Nobody would agree to that, he said. If I am at home and my company calls me and says, we're sending you to a ship stranded in a war zone, no way. Nobody would agree. No relief crew, no evacuation plan. Just, in his own words, uncertainty that is killing them. Kapoor isn't an outlier. Merchant crews across the Gulf are disproportionately drawn from the Philippines and India. Men who take these contracts precisely because the pay is better than what's available at home, and who are now weighing that pay against a war they had no part in starting. At the height of the standoff in April, the IMO estimated roughly 20,000 seafarers were stranded across the wider Gulf region on close to 2,000 vessels. Kapoor is one name inside a 5-figure number. Let's look at what actually happened, not what was announced. On August 8th, ADNOC reported a first strike on one of its tankers. No casualties, according to Al Jazeera. Iran said nothing publicly about it. 5 days later, on the night of the 13th into the 14th, 2 more ADNOC-linked ships were hit at once. ADNOC called that second attack brought under control. Source, ADNOC's own statement. By late July, Maritime monitors citing IMO figures had already counted 56 confirmed attacks on shipping since the crisis began, which are roughly 2 a week for months before the August incidents even happened. At least 17 seafarers have died since the crisis began. Guardian, as of August 9th, a number that hasn't stopped climbing since. And separately, the Minoan Pioneer, hit by an unidentified projectile in early August. A fire on board, a 3rd engineer still missing. UKMTO is still investigating. Maritime analysts at Windward have said the strike fits a pattern consistent with earlier incidents, but say so explicitly as a pattern read, not a confirmed source. Iran denies involvement. Nobody with direct evidence has gone on record. 3 separate incidents. 3 different official responses contained detained, counted, unresolved. None of them include a plan for the crew. So here's the question that matters. If ships are still getting hit 5 months into this, why is there still no crew protection protocol? Because building one was never anyone's job. Here's whose job it was supposed to be and why it never happened. Shipping companies don't need the strait to be safe. They need the risk to be priceable, insurable, reroutable, absorbable as a cost. Insurers don't need it closed or open. They need volatility, because volatility is what premiums are priced on. Governments don't need a solution. They need a ceasefire announcement, because that's what moves headlines, even when it doesn't move ships. Oil markets already showed how this works. Prices spiked above $110 a barrel in May when the blockade first escalated, a level the market has since pulled back from, though the war risk premium behind that spike never fully disappeared. Every fresh attack resets that pricing. War risk premiums for transiting the strait spike again each time. And ship owners face the same choice every time. Pay far more to keep sailing the direct route, or reroute at a cost that eats into the same margin the premium already ate into. Either way, the bill gets paid on shore. The risk stays on the water. The industry's own war risk assessors, the underwriting committees that decide which waters count as high risk in the first place, don't have a category for stranded crew. They have categories for hull damage, cargo loss, and total loss. The person on the bridge isn't a line item. None of those incentives require protecting the person on the bridge. A tanker captain can't renegotiate his own insurance premium or redraw a shipping lane. He can only decide, watch by watch, whether the passage is worth it, while the people who actually set the terms are in rooms he'll never see. Follow the incentives and a pattern emerges. A system that isn't broken so much as working exactly as designed, just not for the people it claims to protect. And Hormuz isn't the only waterway running this pattern. Crews moving through the Red Sea are facing renewed missile threats as Houthi attacks resume this summer after months of relative calm. Different strait, different campaign, same absent seat at the table. The last time that campaign was at its peak, much of the world's container shipping simply stopped using the Red Sea altogether, rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope instead, adding roughly 2 weeks to journeys that used to take days less. Nobody rerouted the crews out of danger. They rerouted the ships with the crews still on them. Container traffic through the Suez Canal fell by more than half during that campaign's peak, one of the sharpest disruptions to global shipping in years. The ships found another way around. The crews didn't get one. Kapoor is still out there, still waiting for a relief captain who hasn't shown up, still moving cargo he never chose to move through a war he never chose to sail into. There's a version of this where a deal gets signed, insurance rates fall, and crews rotate home on schedule again. There's another where "we are not trained for war" becomes a permanent job description for anyone who works this water. Both are being written right now, in rooms with no seat for the people actually on the ships. Which version wins depends on people who will never have to stand on a bridge and watch smoke on the horizon themselves.